Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the Movie Oubliette.
Hello everyone and welcome to Movie Oubliette, the hemisphere-hugging movie review podcast with me, Dan. I'm not an axe murderer, but refreshed from a holiday in the rainforest, now back in Melbourne, Australia.
And me, Conrad, turning into a Swiftie in Cambridge, UK.
Oh, what? In this podcast, we discuss overlooked fantastical cinema, sci-fi, horror, and fantasy, because covering our entire room in tinfoil, including lamps and furniture, are our idea of great home decorating.
It's a new look.
Hello, Conrad.
Hello, Dan. Welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm back. I am back. But Melinda did a fantastic job in my absence. Yeah, easily a perfect replacement if anything should befall me.
Yeah, she did very well. And it was great to have her here to talk about Troll, which she had a lot of fun talking about. Everyone's dying to know if you've seen it and what you thought of it.
Yes, I did watch it sort of before I listened to the episode that I wasn't in, which was quite a surreal experience. But I, still heard myself within the podcast and the jingles and all the sort of little bits and pieces.
Yes.
I did watch Troll. My first comment would be Rat Burger, because that's what I'm going to shout every time I have a burger from now on. But it was actually a surprisingly fun movie. It was cheap and not at all, no sense of realism at all. Nothing looked real. The plastic plants shaking under doors, just I don't know how they thought that was going to look good. But it was fun. I kind of found it similar to Lady in the Water. So it's sort of an urban fairy tale, like a sort of a city location with fairy tale creatures and elements injected into it. So I thought it was a lot of fun. Very odd movie. The character Malcolm, I thought he was going to become much more of a bigger character, and I was kind of sad when he just got turned into an elf or something. But it was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I would recommend this. I would set it free. So that's my final take.
Phew, okay. So everybody was on tenterhooks trying to find that out. So that's good. It's unanimous.
Oh, yes. yes. Unanimous all round.
Yeah. So how was your holiday? How did it go?
So I did go up to Queensland, up to Cairns, and further up to Port Douglas and the Daintree Forest, Cape Tribulation. It's like the northern sort of tip, near the northern tip of Australia. Lots of tropical vegetation. It's all rainforest. It's apparently one of the oldest rainforests in the world, the Daintree rainforest. It's 180 million years old.
Wow.
We went on a crocodile tour. We saw some crocodiles. We saw a cassowary, which is this huge, emu-sized prehistoric bird that's it's got a bright, vibrant blue neck, head, and this huge kind of bony horn on its head. If you look it up, a cassowary, it's quite a strange bird, but we managed to see one, so that was really exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a holiday. Let's get on with the podcast. What are our listeners saying in our socials?
Well, we heard from Robert Pitts, who had a movie suggestion for us. He said, you need to check out Making Contact from 1985 with a possessed ventriloquist dummy and a boy with psychic abilities and a cute robot. It's a kid's movie.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We haven't done a weird the ventriloquist doll, possessed doll movie, have we?
No, no, not that I'm aware of, but I think this has got a little bit of everything in it. We do actually have it. It's in my stack, and I've got it as Joey. It's
Oh, okay.
a Roland Emmerich movie, I think, from before he did Independence Day and Stargate.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's a
Okay.
German language film.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, it sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I've been intrigued. So it's in the stack, so maybe it'll come up for a patron's vote soon.
Yes, yes.
On Troll, we heard from Frank Reynolds, who said the editor of Troll went on to edit Boys Don't Cry, Reversal of Fortune, and Single White Female. I sublet an apartment from him once. Very cool guy.
Oh, okay. Well, they've got to live somewhere, don't they?
Yeah, I guess so. So I looked him up. His name is Lee Percy, and he also edited Snowden, one of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's attempts to get an Oscar.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, didn't work.
Well, yeah.
And finally, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures. Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge.
And he said, Troll isn't a horror movie, but it's unnervingly uncanny, especially when it's pretending to be normal. It's not consistent in either tone or quality, but it's never not giving me things to think about, or at least notice. Is that a recommendation? Well, it's better than the sequel.
Well, I still haven't seen Troll 2, so I would like to compare.
Yeah, I would too, actually. It's interesting. I know how bad it's supposed to be, but I've never actually seen it. Serge concludes by saying both hosts of this week's episode of Movie Oubliette had seen it as kids, one of them extensively, whereas I was merely scarred by the cover art, so I'm sure priming is an important factor here.
Yes.
Anyway, so yes, as always, we love hearing from you, so please do get in touch.
Yes, please do.
So what will we be doing now, Dan?
Yes, well, I'll just hop on over and grab it. Ugh. Okay, I'm in a tinfoil-covered room.
Oh.
And lots of bug lamps. Okay, I think it's on this coffee table. It's also covered in tinfoil. All right, hang on.
Is it covered in tinfoil?
Oh, it is, yes.
Don't put it in the microwave.
Hey, I'm from Beaver.
I am back.
Ah, welcome back. Stop itching.
Oh, yeah, I know. So today I have got a psychological thriller horror movie from 2006, directed by William Friedkin. It is Bug.
Yes, the late William Friedkin. So we picked this movie prior to the sad news of his passing. So this turns out to be a unplanned but timely retrospective on his career almost.
Yeah. I think this movie was not that popular. I don't know anyone that's seen it. Anyway, it's based on a play by Tracy Letts, who also wrote the screenplay for this film. And it stars Ashley Judd, Michael Shannon, Harry Connick Jr., and Lynn Collins.
Ooh. And what happens in this movie?
Well, set in a rundown motel in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, lonely Agnes meets a well-mannered, seemingly harmless guy, Peter, whilst partying with her best friend, RC. They're instantly drawn to each other, forming a strong relationship. However, Peter's sudden discovery of an infestation of bugs slowly unravels the pair. Not even Agnes's abusive ex-husband or best friend can convince them that there are no bugs.
Oh.
Their insect-obsessed mental state snowballs to a rather grisly conclusion, with plenty of tinfoil, murder, and fire. Lots and lots of fire. Is it all a government conspiracy or just a delusion? We'll find out after the break.
Yes, can't wait. And we're back to talk about William Friedkin's Bug, a 2006 psychological thriller / horror movie. Dan, had you seen this one before?
Yes, I had seen this one before. I went through a stage of watching a lot of sort of indie, I guess, in inverted commas, movies. So a lot of movies with very few characters, a lot of dialogue. So I was going through a lot of like Richard Linklater movies.
Right, yeah.
And I did happen upon Bug as well. I'm not a big William Friedkin fan. I mean, I guess I just haven't really seen any of his movies. I've seen The Exorcist, like everyone else, and Bug. And I think parts of The French Connection. I'm not sure whether I've watched the entire movie. But what's your sort of experience with William Friedkin?
Pretty much the same, which feels a shame, especially with the news of his passing and lots of people eulogizing his genius. It makes you feel like you should see more. I've definitely seen Sorcerer, which I really enjoyed, which is a very tense thriller. Oddly enough, I have not seen another play adaptation he did, Boys in the Band, which was groundbreaking because it's about gay characters. I haven't seen Cruising either, which is an Al Pacino thriller about a serial killer targeting gay men on the cruising scene. I haven't seen either of those. I have seen stuff from his 90s era. Which includes The Guardian, which was sort of a supernatural horror in which the nanny was evil. You know, it was that whole 90s cycle of various different things that were threatening the family in their beautiful home with the white picket fence. So she was the nanny from hell. Although they'd already done that with The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. But anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
This had a whole thing to do with druids and trees, and it was batshit. It'd be interesting to look at some point.
Yeah, I think I have it.
Yeah.
I think I bought it at a sale.
Yeah, I think you do. I think it's in your stack. So we might do it at some point. And he also did one of those erotic thrillers based on a script by Joe Esterhazy called Jade, but it's definitely an also ran. It's not Fatal Attraction or Basic Instinct by any means. I don't even think it's Body of Evidence. I think it's really bottom of the barrel stuff. So he was sort of trading on his horror credentials in the 90s and coasting, and it wasn't doing very well for him. And then you get Bug and Killer Joe, both adaptations of Tracy Letts plays in the noughties, and that seemed to be considered sort of a renaissance for him. And then he hasn't directed anything since, but he's just made a movie called The Cane Mutiny Court Martial. Yeah, he just finished it before he passed. So we have one more Friedkin movie to come. But I had never seen Bug or Killer Joe, actually. I've not seen either.
I haven't seen Killer Joe. Yeah, I mean, considering the three movies, well, 3-ish movies I've seen, The Exorcist, French Connection, and Bug, very different movies.
Yes.
Like very, very different.
Yeah, they are. I mean, he seemed to be able to turn his hand to any genre that he liked, although having said that, his attempt at a comedy, Deal of the Century in 1983, I don't think that went down particularly well. I think he's just a good filmmaker, but he got, after The Exorcist, which was just massive, I think he kind of got typecast a little bit.
Right. Yeah, because this movie doesn't feel like it does feel like an indie film, but comparing it to The Exorcist, it feels like night and day. Like I wouldn't have seen any connection in terms of like signature directing style or any aspects of how Friedkin would make a film. Like I don't see any similarities at all.
No, I suppose it's his directorial style is not necessarily one that sort of marks him out as a great auteur. It's not like a Wes Anderson movie where you look at it and go, oh, that's a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
I don't think he necessarily has that. I think he creates something that fits the material. And in this case, he was very keen when working with Tracy Letts that he not do anything that jeopardized the material. So he doesn't do the thing that you sometimes do with adaptations of stage plays and say, oh, I think he jokes, hey, in this scene, maybe they should be on horseback. He doesn't try to open it out significantly because the whole point of it is two people in a room steadily going crazy. And so he keeps that pressure on. I think possibly that aspect of it appeals to him because the sort of dark political undertones to it and the central characters being tested on faith versus science. I mean, in this case, their faith is something completely self-concocted and pretty wild rather than an established religion. But again, it is very much science versus a fringe home-baked theory that appeals to the psychology of the individuals. So maybe it's thematically the material that appealed to him more so than his filmmaking approach to directing it.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned that it does have a very indie feel, similar to a lot of Richard Linklater movies, because it's hardly any characters in this movie. It's basically two characters for the most part.
Yeah.
There are 2 or 3 other characters that come through, but it's mainly the character of Agnes, played by Ashley Judd, and Peter Evans, played by Michael Shannon, in this motel room, this kind of rundown motel room that she lives in. And they just steadily go crazier and crazier. And it's interesting that it's called bug, but it does have a lot of multiple meanings to the word bug. Like, yes, they think they're infested with these aphids for some reason, which makes no sense.
No.
And they do talk about it making no sense, because aphids are plants. They're bugs on plants. They don't eat humans. They don't bite humans. So anyway, they think they're infested with these aphids that you never see.
No.
You never see any bug shown on film ever. They're always pointing at things, but there's never a bug to be seen. But there's also the idea of being surveillance, being bugged, so to speak. There's these strange phone calls. There's the sound of a helicopter always sort of overhead. So there's that sort of aspect as well. So it does deal with a lot of themes of paranoia, sort of loneliness, isolation. But it did feel quite familiar to a lot of conspiracy theorists and QAnon sort of individuals that have cropped up over the past few years as well.
It does, yeah. It's Tracy Letts was inspired by Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma bomber, to write the play. So that happened in 95, and then he wrote the play in 96. And it's very much that mindset, the conspiracy theory mindset. In this case, what the film does is it puts these two characters together, and you have 2 parallel stories, really. It's a love story. Michael Shannon says that he thinks that it's a darkly comic love story.
Right.
So it's looking at how an individual will become codependent, and therefore, in order to be part of the life experience of somebody else, will even adopt their beliefs in some way, and they will end up codependent on each other and amplifying each other's beliefs until it gets to an extreme level, unfortunately, in this case. But also just that need, because I think it's fair to say that Agnes is pretty much on the fringes of society. She's not doing great. She works in a bar. She has an ex-husband who is just getting out of prison. She had a child which she lost 9 or 10 years ago in mysterious circumstances. It was taken from her while she was shopping in a grocery store. And she's living in a motel, so it feels like she's right on the edge. She's not having a great time. And Peter Evans is on the run from a military hospital where he believes he was being experimented on, or maybe he was being treated because mentally he is not very well. It could easily be either, but he's on the run from that, and the 2 of them come together and just concoct this fantasy and this understanding of how they perceive the world that puts them in a position of power. They have special knowledge. They are the center of this massive conspiracy, so therefore they are important people with agency rather than complete losers who are on the brink of starvation almost. So that's kind of the 2 things running in parallel. What would you do? How extreme would you go in order to be in love with somebody? And how deranged is love? Love as insanity versus the whole conspiracy theory experience whereby disenfranchised and poor people end up believing in these ridiculous things just because it gives them something special and makes them feel better about themselves.
Yeah. But I also see similarities with the whole internet phenomenon with QAnon and all those conspiracy theorists in terms of it's an echo chamber. They're completely isolated.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have any sort of connection with the outside world and reality and society. It's just them, just the 2 characters stuck inside this motel room. They don't have computers or the internet. And anytime an outside force like RC, the best friend, comes in trying to convince them it's not real, there's no bugs, they just don't believe it because they're sort of reinforcing each other. It's that sort of echo chamber mentality.
Yeah, very much so.
And also when Harry Connick Jr.'s character, Jerry, he's a bad guy. So of course they're not going to listen to this guy because he's just an asshole anyway. He's violent, he's obnoxious, he's not a nice character.
No, he's not. I mean, that's the interesting thing with Jerry, is that he is the ex-con, ex-husband, not quite sure what the situation is. He shows up and he's immediately laying claim to Agnes, like our relationship is just going to continue where we left off. It's clear that relationship was abusive. And he just takes her money and just lays claim to her life, her future, her body, everything, just immediately assumes he can just have it. And then when she stands up for herself, slaps her to the floor.
Yeah.
So immediately, because the film opens with her getting these phone calls where nobody speaks, she claims it's Jerry that is menacing her with these calls. He claims that it's not him when he shows up, that he has no idea what she's talking about. So the film sets it up as though it's the ex-con coming back who is the outside threat. But then when he shows up, he isn't really. He's quite a complicated character because on the one hand, he's toxic and not a nice guy in this relationship. But at the same time, you get these little shreds of him, like pointing out to Peter that when he's dragged out all of their child's toys, that he really ought to clear them away before Agnes gets home because it will upset her. And then talking quite plaintively about how difficult it was for him to hold down all the jobs that he needed to hold down in order to provide for his family. So you think he's not a 100% stereotypical asshole. He's just another guy who's in a really bad situation and not dealing with it very well. And in the end, he's sort of the outside savior who's trying to break in and stop something terrible from happening in the finale. So Jerry's not as clear-cut as he appears. He's sort of stereotypically the external threat, but then as the film develops, more ambiguous and possibly even heroic.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's interesting you say that. Because I did see him as the threat and as the sort of terrible antithesis to to Peter's character. Because I feel like without Jerry, Peter would seem much more creepy. Like Peter is quite a strange character to start off with. He's very reserved. He's very polite, like almost unsettlingly polite. Like he calls her ma'am and she even says like, don't call me that. Like,
Yeah.
And he almost seems quite sheltered, like he hasn't lived in, he hasn't gone out and traveled the world. Like he seems like he's very naive. But then he has all these weird conspiracy theories and turns into a completely different character by the end. And I feel like Agnes wouldn't have this connection with him without Jerry being the absolute arsehole that he was, like slapping her in the face, because it's that sort of contrast between the two characters.
Yeah, he seems quite sweet and harmless by comparison to Jerry, you're right. And as well as that, he makes it clear that he's not sexually interested in her to begin with.
Yeah.
Because he's asexual almost. But then eventually says that she's different and he'll make an exception for her.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting as well because both Peter and Agnes turn into different characters by the end of the movie. So Agnes is much more, I feel like she is a confident, sort of empowered woman at the start. But then at the end, she's like a scared, restless, almost like a junkie without the drugs. Like she's just cannot cope with reality. She's like slapping all these imaginary bugs away from her face. Whereas Peter at the start, he doesn't seem in control. He seems like he's very like shy and reserved, but in the end, he's very much in control to the point where he murders someone because he thinks they're a machine.
Yes, Dr. Sweet, who he stabs, which is possibly, apart from a few moments of self-mutilation, probably the most overt scene of horror in the movie. And there aren't that many of them.
Yeah, I mean, when he pulls out his tooth, though, I mean, I was just like clutching my face.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, self-dentistry is not good.
No.
Well, it's a very intense performance from Michael Shannon, who had originated the role in the stage play.
Oh, right.
So he's known this material for over a decade by the time that they made this movie. And Friedkin had to fight for him to be the male lead in this movie because Michael Shannon was not very well known at the time. He was cropping up in a lot of movies. If you look at his filmography, he's all over the place, including something I completely forgotten, which is his debut in Groundhog Day, where he's one of the newlywed couple.
Yeah, no, I completely did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those actors that completely flies under the radar for me. Like, I know he's in stuff, and I do recognize him, but I forget what he's in.
Yeah.
But so much. I mean, obviously, his biggest role now is in all the DC movies as Zod. So the Man of Steel, the new Flash movie, he's in that as well. But he's also in Bullet Train recently and in Knives Out, The Shape of Water. But then like some classics like 8 Mile, Pearl Harbor, Vanilla Sky, Bad Boys 2. Like, he is in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he's a busy character actor. And when he's in big franchise movies, he tends to be evil.
Yeah.
Because he does play
he does.
psychologically disturbed extreme people quite well and terrifyingly well, as we said. I mean, he's terrifying in this.
It's his buggy eyes. I mean, excuse the pun, but they are kind of buggy. Like, they're disturbing. So this movie is a play, or it's based on a play, and it feels like a play. It feels like you've got scene changes where it's like, okay, we've got the flypaper scene and we've got the tinfoil scene. Like, you can see, like, I can imagine this as a stage show. Like, okay, this is a set change. This is what it looks like now. And then you have an extended dialogue scene with lots and lots and lots of dialogue. And then it ends. And then we've got the next scene, which is a completely different look to the set.
Yeah. And there aren't that many cutaways or parallel stories being developed. You don't see RC's life separate from Agnes. You don't see Jerry's life separate from his appearances. There is no attempt made to widen out this story at all, but that serves, as I said, the nature of the pressure cooker that they're trying to create here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very much a stage play on film.
Yeah, I do find that is the downfall of adapting stage plays. They do feel like they are still stage plays. Like, I don't feel like a lot of cinematic input into a stage play adaptation. And I watched Fences, that is it Denzel Washington, that movie, and that movie's great, but it also just feels like a stage play. Lots of extended dialogue scenes, one location at a time. There's no sense of movement location-wise.
No, I mean, the one thing I do like is the recurring motif of the helicopter. There's a fantastic opening shot that is slowly moving towards the motel, locating it in this sort of desert wilderness. I think it is actually Oklahoma where the film is set.
Right, yes.
And those scenes where, for example, after Peter and Agnes are first emotionally vulnerable with each other, they almost split up, they have an argument, and then he comes back in and he's sobbing, explaining his backstory, and says that he doesn't want to leave, and she comes out of the bathroom and says, don't leave me, don't leave me. So they've been vulnerable, exposed themselves to each other in a way. And at that point, the helicopter blows up the room. There's like lights flying everywhere. The bed sheets are flying around the room. It's like a poltergeist event almost in this room, supposedly, just because this helicopter is hovering overhead. And yet you cut, and this is never mentioned again. There are no after effects. It's just like this explosion of emotion in the room. So, and they have the same effect towards the end when everything is sort of getting really tense and extreme, and the two of them, spoilers, are about to set themselves on fire, and Jerry's trying to bust down the door. And the interesting thing there is that inside the room for Agnes and Peter, it's lights everywhere, helicopters overhead, it's complete chaos.
Yeah.
You cut to Jerry's side and it's like desert at night, crickets, there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
So I wonder
Yeah.
if that's just the one moment where you get to cut outside of Agnes and Peter's fantasy and you get to see the reality of how things really are, or whether it's just two different perceptions of the same thing and neither is objectively true.
I mean, I listened to the commentary of this movie with the director. I think it's the director. By the way, not a great commentary, I have to say. He pretty much recites what's happening in the movie as it's happening. Like, where's the insight, William Friedkin? Like, I want to know about, like, how many takes you did. Like, where was the location? What's the set like? What lenses you used? I don't want to know about what's happening right in front of me. Like, I know that.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, it's one of my least favorite things on commentary is number one, just describing the scene. Number two, eating.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I hate that. It's terrible.
One other thing that was very odd about the commentary with the director is I think he thought the commentary was going to be edited because he says a line. It's almost like he's reading off a script, but he's not. He's just talking, but he will say something and then he will stop midway because he's flubbed it up and he will say it again. And so he keeps saying a lot of things twice, but it's all in the commentary. It's unedited. So it's very strange to listen to.
Oh, no. That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Oh, poor William Friedkin. They're exposing all of his flubs. That's not great.
Yeah. It's an odd experience to listen to that.
Yeah.
I mean, one insight that he does mention with the movie and his sort of interpretation of the play is he did leave a lot of ambiguity. So he does leave it open to interpretation of whether any of this stuff even happens, like whether any of the helicopter stuff is real at all, or whether it's completely a delusion. Also, the murder of Dr. Sweet, whether that even happens, whether Dr. Sweet is just a figment of their imagination or whether he was a real character. So he kind of does leave it open.
Yeah, and also Peter is sort of complaining about aphids in their bed early on and is pointing at this spot on the bed, and Friedkin does not go in for a close-up.
No,
there could be something there, but equally there might not be. Agnes certainly does not see it or says that she can't see it, but eventually just believes him on the basis that, well, he must be pointing at something and maybe I just need to get my eyes tested. And then she goes from that to immediately accepting anything that Peter says as their relationship grows and their codependency grows.
Yeah, but I do feel like there is a focus or a sort of a emphasis on these people are just crazy. There is a bit of grey area and ambiguity, but for the most part, it's like, yeah, these people are just going insane. They are just crazy people, as opposed to other movies like 10 Cloverfield Lane or The Invisible Man or The Forgotten Saint Maud, where you think, oh, is it happening or is it not happening? And then it's definitely not happening, or it is happening, as in some of those movies.
Yeah, I think it does a reasonably good job of maintaining that ambiguity, but the thing is that the things that they are believing in are just so ridiculous, and especially when it gets to the end where they're in the tinfoil room and Peter is demanding that Agnes think harder and see the connections between these different things in her life, and she sits there and just spins this ridiculous yarn that incorporates every aspect of her life. RC, Jerry, the disappearance of her son in the grocery store, and fabricates this conspiracy that is entirely centered upon her until she ends up standing up and screaming, I am the mother superbug, or whatever it is that she screams.
I am the mother superbug. Yeah, it's great. It's great. But I do find, like, performance-wise, when you have, you know, people unraveling in terms of their mental state, it reaches the point where it's no longer distressing and sad. It's just funny.
Right.
Like, I found the last scene incredibly comedic, and I don't think it's supposed to be.
Okay.
But I laughed a lot.
I laughed at the superbug line.
Yeah.
But I think it's supposed to be. William Friedkin did have a very, very dark sense of humor. I mean, he always thought The Exorcist was pretty funny.
Well, yeah.
And he has described it as a black comedy.
Right.
And so has Michael Shannon, and so has Tracy Letts.
Uh-huh.
And I think they were pretty disappointed with the fact that Lionsgate attempted to sell it to the hostile crowd. So
Right.
that all of the marketing when the film was released, I think Tracy Letts jokes about it in an interview, and it's very funny, saying, you know, the trailers were sort of like, they live in your blood,
Right.
they multiply in your brain. You know, it's ludicrous, he said, because all these teenagers that loved torture porn were showing up to this movie and thinking, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And all the people that might have been interested in a psychological study of codependency and insanity didn't show up because they thought it was some stupid torture porn movie.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
did not do terribly well. I mean, it garnered $8 million worldwide on a $4 million budget, and it was released on the 25th of May 2007 and placed 5th behind Pirates of the Caribbean at the World's End,
Right.
Shrek the Third, Spider-Man 3, and Waitress, a rom-com with Kerry Russell and Nathan Fillion that I have completely forgotten. Note that 3 of those movies are the third entry in a franchise, that threequels. And
Yeah.
Tracy Letts just said, just releasing it alongside Pirates of the Caribbean was just insane.
Yeah.
Just a ridiculous
Well, yes.
choice.
No chance.
Now it's time for random trivia.
Okay, it's trivia time. Conrad, it's your turn today to give us your bug-infested morsel of goodness.
Well, my little piece of trivia comes from Michael Shannon, and he said that this is his favourite piece of trivia about the movie. The last shot in the film was not directed by anyone, and that's because when the special effects guys put the flammable gel over the tinfoil room, they obviously overdid it, because when they lit that room, it was such a terrifying blazing inferno
Right.
that the whole cast and crew who were watching safely from outside behind the camera ran screaming into the school courtyard to get out of there.
Wow.
And the cinematographer's eyebrows that's Michael Grady, his eyebrows were singed. So he abandoned the camera and ran. So he said that slow tilt up that ends the movie up to the ceiling, nobody directed that. That's the camera just doing its own thing.
Oh, wow.
While the set burns down.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Like the tripod just melting under the extreme
Yeah,
heat.
or something. But amazingly, the footage was fine.
That final shot is terrifying. It's just so much fire.
Yeah.
Just so much destruction.
Yeah, but when you watch the movie and you watch that shot, just think of the cast and crew running from the room in horror.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's our trivia.
It is.
I'm going to go back to talking about performances. We did talk about Michael Shannon. I thought Ashley Judd was phenomenal in this movie. I don't think I've seen her play a character like this before.
No, I haven't either. I mean, it feels like she kind of disappeared after her heyday in Miramax movies like Double Jeopardy. And of course, we all know why.
Oh, really? I mean, that's the only other movie I've seen her in, I feel.
Yeah, so she was this burgeoning massive star with critical acclaim and popular appeal, and then she appears in a Miramax movie, and at that point crosses paths with Harvey Weinstein.
Right, that's right.
And awful things happen to her. And so her voice actually appears in that movie recently where they were looking at the 2 reporters that were trying to expose all of Harvey Weinstein's wrongdoing. She actually makes a voice-only cameo in that, talking to them on the phone about her real experiences playing herself.
Wow.
As Michael Shannon said about this movie, she came into this movie, the way he put it, was with a lot of ammunition. And shortly after this movie was released, she checked herself into a clinic to get help with depression and codependency,
Wow.
interestingly enough. So yeah, Ashley was dealing with a lot of personal torment and experiences in Hollywood at that time. And to see her, if she did, sort of channel that or just challenge her creativity into this character, it's very impressive. It's amazing performance.
Yeah, yeah. And even nudity-wise, it's very revealing, I guess you would say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the two of them lay themselves bare during the course of the movie, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So it's gutsy stuff.
It is. I don't know. I feel like on this podcast, we don't really see performances like this very often.
No.
Like it's full on crying and like raw emotion, what looks like real emotion as well on screen. Incredibly impressive performances.
Yeah, and I guess that speaks to the quality of writing. I mean, Tracy Letts is a Pulitzer Prize winner for writing drama. He's pretty damn good,
Yeah.
as you said. So I think this is very much a two-hander for two actors on stage. So there is a lot of focus on performance and character creation in the most extreme of psychological profiles as well. So it's meaty stuff. You can immediately see why Ashley Judd was attracted to it at this point in her life.
Sure.
When she's probably not getting offers like this very much. And obviously the backers of the movie wanted a name to be in there, because if they were going to have Michael Shannon, who was not very well known then at all, they needed something to hang the advertising around. What did you think of Harry Connick Jr. as Jerry?
I thought he was great. I was convinced that he was an asshole. I mean, I didn't even realize he did that much acting, but he does. And he was in Independence Day, like a voice in The Iron Giant. He's in Basic, Copycat, Memphis Belle, I think was one of his first sort of standout roles, because he's just a jazz singer, right?
Yeah.
That's how I know him.
I know, and it's interesting the roles that he chooses. I mean, particularly Copycat was an eye-opener, because he's kind of this squeaky clean, crooning Michael Bublé kind of figure in my mind.
Right, yes, exactly.
And then he showed up in Copycat with a chipped tooth, playing this really revolting serial killer, just this disgusting man in every way. And here, as a representation of really brutish, toxic masculinity, he is threatening, but he's also quite charming as well.
Yeah.
So it's very well done, I think. Good casting.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a bad-looking guy. Like,
No.
it's not like they chose a very menacing guy to play the bad guy. He sort of treads that line really well.
Yeah, you can see why Agnes would have fallen in love with him in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with a body like that, I mean, come on. Come on, lady.
Yeah, I did like the scene where she assumes that Peter is in the shower, and then the door opens and out comes Jerry. He just emerges from this room enshrouded in this mist.
Yeah, I know. No shit on. Yeah, I thought they were going to do sort of double character thing. Like, I thought it was going to be like the first time I watched it, like a sort of Fight Club sort of scenario, but they are distinctly two characters.
They are, yeah, and we see them having conversations with each other.
Yes. Briefly, I wanted to mention Lynn Collins, who plays RC. She was in one episode of Hit Record on TV.
Was she?
Season 1. Oh. She was in the customer service sort of short that they made.
Oh, okay.
And I do remember her. She has like brunette hair and that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's very good as RC. She's kind of the life of the party. She's the only sort of happy-go-lucky, openly funny character, and that's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And also comes in trying to offer an external independent perspective on their situation, but is not immediately rejected for it, because Agnes is kind of going along with her and wanting to see a doctor and getting a second opinion.
Yeah,
but then Peter pitches a fit, and then she slaps her in the face and rejects her. So
Yeah. I did want to talk about Peter in terms of he is very manipulative in controlling Agnes in a way that's different to how partners would control their loved ones. So he's not controlling her aggressively or domestically like maybe how Jerry would, but he is kind of victimizing himself so that she would take pity on him and stay with him. So that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and it uniquely works on Agnes because she's ready to stand up to Jerry.
Yes.
But the woman who lost her child and has nowhere to put all of that maternal instinct is presented with this wounded bird that needs looking after, and that works like a charm, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's whether he's consciously doing it or whether he is subconsciously doing it. Yes, he's doing all the right things to hook her in and get her more and more involved in his world.
Yes. It's scary in a different way.
Yeah. It's almost a tragedy. It's the two of them have got these flaws, neither of which are their fault, really. They've been through some bad experiences, both of them, and the two of them together is just a nightmarish combination. Sadly, they're the worst things that each person could possibly have.
Yeah. I also wasn't sure about Lloyd, so the son that Agnes lost, like he disappeared. I wasn't sure whether she had lost him because he had disappeared or whether she was just a terrible mother and they'd taken him away to, Child Protective Services or something. Like, what was your take on that?
I wasn't sure entirely. You do get the flashback of her in the grocery store, and you get the hint of it early on when she's shopping and she's remembering. She's sort of staring wistfully at onions and then looking at an empty shopping cart.
Yeah.
So you get foreshadowing of the memories that will come tumbling out later. And Jerry certainly doesn't offer us a different perspective that suggests that the child was taken away.
Yeah.
What I find really confusing is what Dr. Sweet says when he turns up. And he's either a figment of their imagination or he's real and he's humoring them because he knows that the only way to get them to cooperate is to tell them something that will fit into their worldview.
Yeah.
And saying, I'll take Peter in and we can do an operation on him. We can get rid of the bugs. We made a mistake and I know it was wrong and I'll fix it. But then he says to her that he can even get her child back and that he's alive and he knows where Lloyd is. And that's, even if he's humoring her, that's just cruel. That's awful.
Yeah. I do question whether he was real. He smoked some drugs in front of them.
Yeah.
For some weird reason. I thought, why is he doing this? Like, it just felt like a sort of a non-existent character, like a character that will just do whatever because he's not real.
Yeah, could well be. It's a hauntingly strange performance as well from Brian F. O'Byrne, not somebody I recognise. But that's one of the areas of the film where I'm not really sure what exactly happened because we're not presented with enough information from reliable narrators.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about sets. It's the same motel room the whole way through, but it does go through a bunch of different transformations. At one point, there's flypaper everywhere. And then, of course, the tinfoil room.
Yes.
It must have been amazing. It must have been so much fun to do that. Like, just wrap everything in tinfoil, hang a bunch of bug lamps. I noticed the telephone and the stereo are wrapped in plastic.
Yeah.
So they must have had a lot of fun with that set.
Yeah, I noticed every single blade of the ceiling fan has been individually wrapped in tinfoil. And the work involved in that must have been phenomenal.
Yeah.
So they shot this in a school gymnasium. They built the set inside a school gymnasium, yeah. And the sets were designed actually by the same guy that was the production designer for Hostel.
Right.
So it's sort of the same sort of grungy, down and out, grimy detail that you might expect from that. But yeah, it works and it gives you a very different color temperature for the different parts of the movie. So, it's very rustic and warm and earthy tone to begin with. And then the end of the movie is just completely blue.
Yeah, from the bug lamps and just a lot of reflective surfaces.
Yeah, it's visually they managed to make the most out of a slow descent into madness in this one room as the narrative progresses.
Yeah, and then the final scene as well with them setting themselves on fire naked as well. They strip off all their clothes, just cover everything in gasoline and lights it. And that expression from Agnes, that sort of shock of when he lights that match is just like horrifying.
Yeah.
And then everything just explodes.
Yeah. Fortunately, you don't see what happens to them.
Yeah.
Unlike the ending of St. Maud, for example, which
Well, Saint Maud.
haunted me.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Self-immolation.
No,
It's not fun,
not
I
that.
don't think.
No. But talk about a slap in the face for an ending.
Oh, yeah.
Just credits.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely your grungy noughties independent movie with a downer of an ending.
Yeah. I guess we have to mention quickly score. Not much score.
No.
A lot of diegetic music. Some sort of hints of heavy metal at points, just inserted in places. I did find they used sound really well in terms of making it really jarring and unnerving. So really loud sound cues or music cues, and then just cuts it out.
Yeah, it's very much like The Exorcist. The sound design in that is superb and built towards making you as uncomfortable as possible, and that's definitely reflected here too. Yeah, you don't get a lot from Brian Tyler, who's a very accomplished film score composer.
Yeah, because I know him for doing a lot of big blockbuster action movies.
Yeah.
Like a lot. Like I think he's done a bunch of the Fast and Furious movies, a bunch of the Marvel movies. He's done 2 Scream movies, Expendables movies. Yeah, he's the guy for action or blockbuster.
Yeah, and particularly for things that are sort of infused with a rock sensibility as well when one is needed. So if you want to have drum set and guitar thrushing along with your orchestra, then Brian Tyler's the guy to call, I guess.
Yeah.
And also well known for being probably the most handsome film score composer on earth.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah, I always remember being in a film score forum where somebody was saying, okay, who do you think's the most handsome film score composer? And somebody immediately replied, paging Brian Tyler.
Right, okay.
Coming to you live from the movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mblie Awards.
Hello, it's that special time of the pod, the Mblie Awards, where we nominate our favourite aphid-infested parts of the film in a number of self-immolating categories.
Good grief.
Best quote.
My favourite quote is quite a sad one. It comes from Agnes, and I think it's the emotional crux of the movie. And she says to Peter, I'd rather talk about bugs with you than about nothing with nobody. Aww. Yeah. She's so lonely she'd rather self-immolate with this bug-infested lunatic than carry on being alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. My favorite quote is, I don't know, I found this movie incredibly funny in parts. So there's one part where RC has come in and she's like sort of questioning, there are no bugs, and Peter's asking Agnes if she believes in the presence of bugs, but she's not sure. So he replies, the sign outside says vacancies or no vacancies. It doesn't say possibility of vacancies.
Yeah, he's an absolutist. You're either in or you're out.
Yeah.
His conspiracy.
Yeah.
Best hair or costume.
Well, talking about RC, I guess there aren't really any costumes or hair that's that noteworthy in this movie, but RC is sort of the epitome of the 2000s, because she's got the sort of tight jeans, the sort of cowboy studded belt, studded leather wristbands, and blonde streaky hair, just really reminiscent of like characters like Hannah Montana and Avril Lavigne and sort of Kelly Clarkson, that sort of rock chick look that was very sort of prevalent in the early 2000s. Sort of rock meets country as well. But yeah, She does look great.
I've written exactly the same thing, and I was waiting in the bar scene for her to jump up on the bar and start singing Can't Fight the Moonlight, because
Right, yes.
it's just, yeah, the whole wavy blonde hair with bangs and the tight jeans and the vest top and too much jewelry. She's got rings on every finger, and they're not delicate rings either. They're
rings.
massive.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Yeah, she must have had a hard time getting through airport security.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Most naughty moment.
I mean, Asi's clothes, obviously, but also I feel like there was a resurgence of sort of indie films in the noughties. Like I'm thinking of sort of Donnie Darko, Juno, Requiem for a Dream. Was that considered an indie film? Mysterious Skin,
Yeah, definitely.
Little Miss Sunshine, Elephant, and Napoleon Dynamite. And a lot of films sort of dealing with the human condition or like mental health, or sort of a lot of character-driven, sort of dialogue-heavy indie dramas in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I wonder whether it's the emergence of digital cameras that made that possible
Sure.
in the early aughts.
Yeah, possibly.
I think it might have done. It's not streaming, because that's, yeah, you're about a decade away from that. But, yeah, I did wonder about that. The other thing I thought was things inspired by domestic terrorism.
Right, yes.
Well, things inspired by terrorism, but in this case, domestic terrorism. So I just think that that sort of sense of paranoia post 9/11 in the early aughts did mean that you got a lot of these sort of paranoid movies, edgy movies back then.
Favorite scene.
I did like the flypaper scene, or the scene where they had flypaper sort of dangling from everything. There were just so many sort of dynamics or changes of dynamics. So it starts off with Jerry and Peter talking, and then RC and Agnes enter the room, and then Jerry's told to leave, and then RC is trying to convince them that bugs don't exist, and then finally it sort of ends with Peter freaking out, and sort of that shift where Agnes is not sure whether she believes in bugs or Peter's sort of fear of the infestation, and then she completely chooses his side. And I just like all of those dynamics sort of intertwined between all the characters.
Yeah, she's all in from that point onwards.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. It's the crux of the movie, and it's where my favourite line comes from too, so yeah.
Most cliche moment.
My biggest cliche is the gay best friend.
Oh,
who
yes.
provides
yes.
comic relief, but doesn't actually have an on-screen relationship, because who wants to see that? So I'm thinking particularly during this period, I mean, probably the example everyone thinks of is Rupert Everett in My Best Friend's Wedding in 1997. He also played the same role to Madonna in The Next Best Thing in 2000. There's the character Damien in Mean Girls in 2004, Stanley Tucci in The Devil Wears Prada in 2006, Paul Rudd in The Object of My Affection as well. So late 90s, early aughts, it was all about the gay best friends providing the comic relief in a really otherwise heavy movie, maybe, or in a rom-com. They're always there for a good laugh, but never see their partners, ever. No.
Yeah.
Never see them with partners.
Best special effect.
Are there any special effects in this movie?
I guess it's just the two violent scenes. So the teeth pulling out scene and the murder stabby scene. In terms of like fake blood and just absolute horror, the teeth pulling out scene is it's horrific because there's just so much blood. It's a lot of blood.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say would be Peter's appearance at the end of the movie. You get kind of a hint of it early on, like at the beginning of the film, you get a sudden shot of the tinfoil-filled bathroom with Peter lying in it, which is obviously where he is before he emerges. But that final moment when he emerges to confront Dr. Sweet, and his hair's sticking out everywhere, and he's bare-chested and just covered with self-inflicted wounds, and he's got like blood like dripping from one of his eyes or something.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks terrifying. It's very much like the effects in The Exorcist on Reagan, actually, that the horror comes from how much she's wounded herself.
Sure.
During the possession. That's what makes it look so horrific. But yeah, I thought that was pretty good work.
Yeah.
Favorite sound effect?
So sound effect for me, so there is a sex scene in this movie, and it's sort of approached in a really interesting way, to the point it's almost like ASMR. Like the music's really quiet, sort of gentle, like a plucked. I think it's like a plucked instrument. I'm not entirely sure what it is. And then all you can hear sound-wise is like just really quiet breathing and gasping, and it's sort of a gentle wave of hissing bugs, and like the womp womp sort of sound of the helicopter / fan blades sort of spinning around. But it's really quiet. Like the whole scene is like super quiet. So it's quite a strange, eerie experience to watch.
Yeah, it's not sexy at all.
Yeah. Although everyone's very sweaty. There's a lot of moisture. in the scene. But yeah, like sound-wise, it's an interesting choice.
Well, my favourite was just one particular noise, and it's the cricket chirp that turns out to be a smoke alarm.
Yes.
Which I think is a relatable experience for everyone. The sound actually slowly morphs when you listen to it. It slowly morphs from something that is clearly organic to begin with to something that's believably electronic.
Right, yes,
and
yes.
It's fun if you're listening to it in 5.1 surround sound, because it does move around according to which shot you're in. They're trying to locate it, because it's really difficult to figure out where sounds are coming from sometimes when you're in an enclosed space with lots of reflections. But yeah, I just thought it was a very clever piece of sound design. Also, thematically, it's quite important because it's an insect, it's a bug.
Yeah.
But then when they finally trace down its source, it's an electronic monitoring device. And one that has a radioactive isotope in it, so it's actually harmful to human beings as well. So thematically, yeah, it sums it up quite nicely.
Yeah.
I thought.
Most funniest moment?
I have to say it, the funniest moment was when Agnes, in the depths of her delusion, covered in blood, arms outstretched to the heavens, she screams, "I am the super mother bug!" Was so hilarious to me. Just so hilarious.
Yeah, I did laugh at that. But it's still a wonderful, fully committed performance.
Yeah.
I believe Agnes believes that at that moment.
Yeah, she does. But what a line.
It's an empowering moment. Oh, yeah. My funniest moment is a little line of comedy between Agnes and Peter, where Peter, in all earnest, says that he's from Beaver, a town, presumably, somewhere. But Agnes replies, "Well, we're all from Beaver, aren't we?"
Yeah, I noticed that too.
What I particularly love about it is it goes completely over Peter's head.
Yeah,
he just does not get it at all.
Yeah.
Okay, and
all right.
that's our Mblies.
Yes.
I'm Mary Jo Peel, and you are listening to Movie Oubliette.
Okay, it's time for our final verdicts. Should William Friedkin's Bug be released from the Oubliette to spread its visceral itchiness throughout the masses and be adored by all, or should its tinfoil-wrapped infestation be showered in gasoline, set alight, and turned to smouldering ash back in the Oubliette, never to be seen again? Conrad, your first time watching Bug, what's your final take on this movie?
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I can't say that it's like an enjoyable experience necessarily, and I can't say that it's a film that I'm going to be buying a special 4K edition of and pulling off my shelf to lovingly revisit on a regular basis. But on the other hand, I can see why Mark Kermode, who is a huge Friedkin aficionado, says that it's his return to form and one of his best films. And I can see why Friedkin says that it's the most intense project that he'd ever worked on. And, in terms of taking the play and putting it on screen and giving it some touches of cinematic twists, like with the helicopters stuff and the set decoration and the sound design and the editing and so on and so forth, I think it's a really solid rendering of the play. It's a fascinating topic. The dialogue's amazing. The progression of the characters is amazing. And the performances from Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon and the supporting cast, just astonishing to watch and fully believable and terrifying. So I think it would be sort of churlish and wrong, especially considering Friedkin's recent passing, to say, no, this isn't worthwhile. This should go back in. It's a solid piece of work from a director that we've sadly lost, and it's certainly better than what he did in the 90s. I think if you're interested in checking out some of Friedkin's lesser-known work, I think this is a really good one to pick. I think it's a very impressive piece of work. What do you think?
Yeah, so I have seen this movie before. I did really enjoy it the first time I watched it. Watching it again, I did feel, I don't know whether it does enough in terms of making it separate from a play. Like, it is just a play on screen, but not incredibly cinematic. But I do love the performances, and they are incredible. They are very, very, very well done. For Ashley Judd, for Michael Shannon, and even Harry Connick Jr. Does a really good job of his character. I think this movie, for some people, might be hard to stomach. It's not your usual type of movie with locations and lots of characters. It's just the slow and inevitable descent of two very troubled people in a motel room, and it's quite fascinating to watch it. It is. I think this movie improves on repeat watches as well. I think once you know what's going to happen, you do notice a lot of things in terms of the dialogue that you miss. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating movie. It's very well done in terms of one location, hardly any characters. I think for some people it might appear a bit pretentious as well. I think this is a movie film students would really enjoy, and actors would really enjoy. I'm not sure whether general audiences would really enjoy this movie, but I think it's a very impressive film. So I would set it free.
Interesting. Well, let's check out and see what our patrons thought. Hello, Hal.
Yes, Conrad?
Could we have the final verdict of our patrons, please?
Our patrons have decided to throw the film back into the Oubliette.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Oh, it's the first time we've had the patrons disagree with what both of us have said.
Yeah, it wasn't unanimous, but it does come out as throw it back. So Eddie Coulter said, break out the raid and drive it back into the Oubliette. Bug is my least favourite of Friedkin's work. I've watched it a few times over the years and my opinion hasn't changed. I feel it trips over itself with too many twists and turns.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. So I feel like I need to watch more of Friedkin's movies to see what Eddie's talking about there. And Chazilla says, I take notes when I watch films for Movie Oubliette.
Oh,
I mean, kudos for the dedication.
Wow.
I love that.
I didn't know people did that.
No, I love it. When I finished watching Bug, I found the same 3 words multiple times on my notepad. Crazy, psycho, and what the fuck. The wife kept hitting pause and asking me, "Are you sure Conrad and Dan picked this?" Awesome performances by Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon. They really sold Crazy. Just too much insanity and neurosis for me. Is this Friedkin's call for help? Line the oubliette with aluminum foil, lure bug in there, seal it up tight and pour concrete over it just in case Crazy really is contagious. And by the way, we both started itching halfway through. Oh no, Chisilla, I hope it has subsided. That's not good. I'm now imagining Chisilla and his lovely wife surrounded by tinfoil. That's not good. So in this case, the patrons disagree with us, but we are going to set it free.
Yes, 2 against 1. All right, be free.
Bye. Oh, wow.
Okay, Conrad, so what is on the schedule for next episode?
Well, we'll be heading back to the 1980s, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear.
Of course.
And for another psychological thriller, but this time it's going to be a foreign language movie.
Oh, okay.
It's the 1983 Dutch psychological thriller, The Fourth Man.
Oh, I never heard of this movie at all.
It's the last Dutch language movie Paul Verhoeven made before he went to America to do RoboCop.
Okay, all right. I don't think I've seen many Dutch movies, actually.
No, me neither. I haven't seen any of his pre-Hollywood work, which is really bad.
Yeah.
So, be interested to check this out. This was chosen by our special guest who will be joining us next time.
Oh, yes. Probably an expert in this film.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to them about it. It's going to be interesting.
And to keep up to date with our future episodes, listeners, you can follow us on all our socials as Movie Oubliette and email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
And you can support the show at Patreon, where for as little as $1 you get access to extended portions of the show. And for $5 you get to vote on the final verdict like our patrons did today.
Yes,
although
yes.
we overruled them.
Yeah. Ha
Yes, and also get access to our monthly minisodes, where this month we talked about Barbenheimer. What else could we talk about?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes. And we also have merchandise at Redbubble and a YouTube channel as well, where you can watch some video essays that we did and some live panels that we were involved with several famous people. And if you haven't already, please give us a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you're using, including Spotify.
Yeah, you can even get the Patreon bonus episodes on Spotify now.
Ah, right. Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, no, it happened this week. Patreon announced it, that you can have a special membership-only stream on Spotify.
Oh, that's
and that's
great.
where you can get stuff now. Yeah.
Technology these days. You can do anything.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
All right, listeners, until next time, goodbye.
Bye for now.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
It ain't bad luck to kill a smoke alarm.